The Soulslike, a whole genre of games all inspired by the seminal Demon Souls, a genre I absolutely love. But it wasn't always that way. It took me a while to get round to playing that dark, gritty classic, and I must confess the things holding me back were the legendary tales of ultra difficulty, the soul-destroying, pardon the pun, boss battles, and the lack of any sort of hand-holding. But despite the prospect of inducing frustration so intense I could hurl my controller through the nearest window, I took the plunge, and boy am I glad I did. What I found lurking underneath that dark, depressing underbelly was a sense of achievement I have never before experienced in a video game. I discovered deep lore and storytelling that revealed itself in drips and drops like blood from a finger wound. I found quirky, interesting characters who I soon found out I could trust about as much as that email I received from a Nigerian prince. I discovered that being hard is just a slice of the cake, it's not the whole cake. So if you have ever been interested in playing a Souls-like but have been put off for one reason or another, here's 5 things that could help you get around to playing them. Number 5, they're not all the same flavour. You've no doubt seen the likes of Elden Ring, Bloodborne, etc, and maybe find the dark, foreboding graphics and apocalyptic feel to those games make you feel a bit like this. But what if I told you not all Souls-like are as dark as Joe Biden's memory bank? They may all sport the familiar gameplay loop, but graphically they come in a variety of styles. Take Another Crab's Treasure for instance. This SpongeBob looking cartoony offering from Aggro Crab may look like a kid's game, but it's a Souls-like through and through. Or maybe try the infinitely charming Death's Door, where you play as a soul-reaping crow, and although some people may not regard it as a Souls-like, and they may have a point, it's close enough to make it a really good starting point to getting into Souls-likes. Another totally separate reason to play Death's Door is the soundtrack. Boy is it good. It's worth buying the game just to hear it, to be honest. Number 4, they really do have a story. If you're the kind of player that needs a bit of storytelling to get you involved in a game, then you may have heard that Souls-like don't have much in the way of story. But in reality, the story is just relayed to the player in a different way. A lot of games lay out the story to the player in a series of cutscenes and dialogue from supporting characters, but in Souls-likes the storytelling is much more organic. Just like everything else in these games, you have to work for it. The story is everywhere. It's in books you find, it's in notes, it's in the environment, by talking to key NPCs, and it's even in the architecture. In fact, the story and lore surrounding some Souls-like is so rich that people have based entire channels dedicated to talking about them. And if you haven't checked out Vatividya yet, you are in for a treat. Story is everywhere in Souls-likes, you just have to dig for it. Number 3, death can be fun. Really? I hear you cry. Dying doesn't really sound like fun times, but it's a matter of perception. In games outside the Souls-like genre, there isn't much in the way of penalties for dying. Just pick up where you left off, or worst case scenario, start from a checkpoint from 30 seconds ago. But Souls-likes are different. There are penalties for your demise. Just like in real life, dying suddenly is not a desirable state of affairs. You may lose some hard-earned souls or runes or whatever the currency of your particular game is, and if you cannot make it back to pick up your lost haul, then bam, no levelling up for you this time round. And it's this fact that makes Souls-like so gripping. Death can be around at any corner, and having consequences keeps you on the edge of your seat. Imagine the scene. You're creeping through a highly dangerous level with enough souls on you to sink a battleship, and out jumps a new enemy you've never seen before. You know you need to be on your A game, the adrenaline is pumping. If you're going to keep your hard-earned stuff, you have to fight out your skin. You survive with a slither of health and make it back to the next save point. That feels good, and it wouldn't feel anywhere near as good if it wasn't for good old-fashioned death. Number 2, play your way. Souls-likes throw loot at you like a politician throws promises at you come election time. New weapons and armour are around every corner, and each have their own benefits and drawbacks. If you have the reflexes of a ninja cat, then you might be at home with a light, nimble character that dives into combat, gets a few hits off, then gets out of town in the blink of an eye. Or if a hit sponge tank that lumbers around swatting enemies with a sword the size of an aircraft carrier is more appealing to you, you can do that too. Alternatively, you may wish to live out your Harry Potter fantasies and zap enemies with magical death from afar. That's also an option. The point is, Soulslike gives you so much flexibility you can often turn them into the game you want to play. Finding a playstyle that suits you is relatively easy. Personally, I feel that this is what puts a lot of people off. They simply didn't find a playstyle that suited them before giving up. With a little perseverance and experimentation, you can create your perfect character. And half the fun of playing Soulslikes games is this journey of discovery towards your ultimate character build. And number 1, play on easy mode. Now, I can already hear the echoes of there is no easy mode, and you would be correct. There is no setting in Soulslikes that you can go to that knocks the difficulty down. But, and this is a big but, there are a ton of things you can do to ease the difficulty of most Soulslikes games. Most of these games operate on the same cycle of killing enemies that drop some form of currency. This currency is then used to level up your character in lots of different areas. Take Dark Souls for instance. Kill an enemy and it will drop a differing amount of souls, usually depending on how tough the enemy is. So if you find you're getting killed a lot more often than you would like, then killing some low level enemies you know you can overpower for their souls and ploughing those souls into stats to improve how hard you hit or how fast you move is always a possibility. Of course, the downside is you may have to defeat the same set of enemies repeatedly to make it to the next level, but this kind of grinding is always an option and one that can help you overcome any enemy you're particularly stuck on. Another thing I would recommend to anyone starting out in a Souls-like game is to get a ranged weapon as quickly as you can. Single enemies can be a real handful, so groups of 3 or 4 can spell certain death. A ranged weapon will help you attract the attention of one enemy at a time and let you deal with them without their buddies sticking their nose in. It can also help you completely kill enemies who can't reach your location, especially useful if they're a hulking, fast-moving slaughter machine. Another tactic you can use to beat troublesome foes is simply running away. What you will find in a lot of Souls-like games is that enemies will have boundaries they cannot leave. Simply run away and after a while they will stop pursuing you and won't be able to go any further. That's your cue to strike with impunity. Not so big and tough now, are we, Mr. Blue Knight? Now, I'm not suggesting that you should complete your entire game using these sorts of cheesy tactics, because after all, a lot of the fun to be had in the Souls-like genre is learning the enemy attack patterns and defeating them using your skills rather than some dodgy exploitation of the game mechanics. But these games can be pretty tough, and sometimes you just need a little something just to get you over the hump and get you past a certain enemy that's given you a lot of grief. When all's said and done though, we play video games to have fun, and frustration isn't fun, so instead of banging your head against the wall, a little bit of cheese could serve you well. Have you just started to play your first Souls-like? If so, let me know which one you're playing and how you're getting on with it. Are you going to stick with the genre and maybe play a different one in the future? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.